everybody. Why don't we go ahead and get started with introductions first? Ray, you want to get us kicked off since you were the top left? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us to join this panel. My name is Ray Liu. I'm CEO, co-founder of Vena Vitals. Real quick context on Vena Vitals, we make a small wearable device that monitors blood pressure continuously. Technology was developed at UC Irvine by my co-founders, Josh, who's here, and Michelle Kine, who's a professor. And real quick intro about my background. I come from the industry side. I have about 20 years in med devices and digital health. Michelle and I actually studied in grad school together about 20 years ago at Berkeley. That's how we met. And I was aware of all the impressive innovations that she and her group and Josh had developed over the years. And so the way that I came to join the startup is really, I think it was about a year and a half ago over Thanksgiving, she called me up and said, "Hey, Ray, we've got this amazing technology." She was super excited about it. And so, in my background, especially being able to bring both med devices through past experience with GE Healthcare and Siemens, as well as more recently on the entrepreneurial side, I have a couple of stints in with a couple of exits where I was head of product for a company that sold to Cigna. We did a health engagement platform for them, and then also more recently another company that sold to Vizient, which is the largest group purchasing organization. So anyways, we can get into more details, but just that's a quick intro about Vena Vitals and myself.
Awesome. Josh, you want to give us a little bit of your background?
Yeah, of course. I'm a little bit of a newbie compared to my other co-founders, Ray and Michelle. My background is a lot in chemistry, and I did my bachelor's in chemistry, and I went to grad school in material science and engineering, and that's where I joined my other co-founder, Professor Michelle Kine at UCI, where we were developing stretchable electronics for health monitoring applications. And so one of my graduate theses was based on making these sensors for continuous B2B blood pressure monitoring, which is now the foundation for Vena Vitals, and we're using that to grow our company. So yeah, and you heard the rest. That's how Ray came on and we became Vena Vitals. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're so excited to have you here and your amazing team here at ULP. And so now we have our team from Entelexo. Who wants to start first? We got a divided house here at Entelexo.
Yeah. Maybe Cameron and Todd, you want to start first? Or
you should start, yeah.
So again, thank you for having us here. So glad to be here. My name is Milad, co-founder and CEO of Entelexo. A little bit about Entelexo. We are developing a new class of drug to treat autoimmunity. I did my PhD at UC Irvine, so I was working on this platform over the last 10 years with some leaders in the field. This is how I came up with that idea. It's easy when you are in the field for 10 years, easy to come up with the idea. So I had that idea for some time till I meet Cameron and Todd in our previous job, where we were part of R&D team. And we work together very effectively under very hostile and stressful conditions. Then this is the environment for a startup company, as you know. So then we decided that's a perfect team, and we decided on a beer. And I asked them actually, in order to convince them to quit their job, I asked them, I grilled some chicken for them. We gave them beer, and I said, let's quit our job. Then this is how Entelexo started.
Yeah, real tough sell.
Yeah,
that's pretty fair. That's a good point. I'm Todd. My background is in mechanics, biomedical and clinical engineering, and electrical engineering. And I function as our chief operating officer. And I'll toss the torch over to Cameron really quickly.
Yeah, and I probably suppose I'm the newbie of this group as well, right? So I did my undergrad studies and graduate studies at the University of Michigan. I was biomedical engineering with a focus in regenerative medicine and biomaterials. I got very interested in stem cell biology. I was doing a lot of work with stem cells, diving into the mechanisms of action, which is kind of where Milad came in and kind of set us down the path of exosomes, things like that. I've done a lot of work as well designing novel CAR receptors for CAR T therapies, as well as some different things with NK cells as well. So I bring a little bit of protein engineering experience to the team that we use to kind of get this product development off the ground. So we, again, very thankful to ULP for housing us and kind of getting us going. Thrilled to be here.
Awesome. One thing we do have in common with both groups is we all like food. So that's the first vetting that we do at ULP before you can become a resident is you have to like to eat. So, well, gentlemen, so glad that you guys are here with us today. You know, the main reason why we got you guys all together is because I can't really count on both my hands how many times I've had people ask me to connect with our YC graduates, and they just have so many questions for you, right? So there's just this mysterious world about accelerators, and is it worth it? So, you know, we're really here today to really talk about these things, and hopefully you guys can be just very candid and be able to share with us and the audience, you know, your different experiences, because you guys are from two very different cohorts, and given the time of these unprecedented times when you joined YC, you know, things were definitely a little bit different. So we'll start with Vena Vitals, and Ray and Josh, maybe you guys can weigh in. You know, what really piqued your interest in YC, and why, you know, how that process get all started for you?
Yeah, sure. And to be honest, initially when we applied to YC, it was because you know, we heard about it, you know, had a great reputation, but we weren't all in. We hadn't done a lot of research. We thought, hey, this application looks pretty easy. Let's go ahead and submit it and see how it goes, and then we'll decide later. That's how we initially, so we essentially stumbled upon it. And once we got in, then it was when we really kicked in our research, and what we did was we pretty much talked to every company that we could get connected with who had previously done YC before, and really vetted out like what the value, what the benefit would be. And for us, it was a difficult decision at the beginning, but once we talked to a lot of the other companies, we were able to dispel a lot of the stereotypes, I would say. Some of the stereotypes, just you know, to touch on a couple of them, is we thought it was for college dropouts who didn't have necessarily that much experience, who they wanted to do something cool, you know, go Silicon Valley and you know, live with a bunch of other like-minded people, and then, you know, grow a company that way. And we felt like that wasn't necessarily a fit for us. But that turned out to be very much a stereotype, because once we talked to other you know, graduates of the program, others who were also like us in terms of, you know, having PhDs, having MBAs, or having, you know, more experience, and also in spaces that are not your traditional software tech company. We talked to a lot of, you know, bio companies, med device companies, and that really helped reinforce the benefits of YC. And for us, ultimately, it was a very easy decision to join YC, and it was more around the value that we would get from the fundraising benefits. So let me pause here, and we can let Entelexo also share a bit about their experience.
Sure. So for us was a little bit different. So I knew about YC. So as a graduate student, actually I always interested in all these accelerator programs. So I attended the startup school that they had for free. So it's like 2 months, you know, course. I finished that, then I applied as a single founder, and I just came there. I got the interview. Looks like getting interviews is even hard. I didn't know that, so I wasn't happy getting the interview. So I flew to San Francisco. You know, met these folks. They said, "Look, Milad, we love the idea. It's good. We like your background, but single founder for developing a new class of drug, it's you need some co-founders. You need some people to help you." They said, "Look, we're gonna reject you this time, but definitely go find some co-founders, then reapply again." This is how it started for me. I had all the connection because they knew me based off the you know, interviews, and I actually handled the interview very well. I answered all these questions perfectly fine, and all I needed to do to find some co-founders, then reapply again. This is how I did it. After meeting Cameron and Todd, we just reapplied, then we got in.
Yeah, and we should probably mention as well, that wasn't, at least initially, a unanimous decision. I was kind of fighting that 7% giveaway, at least initially, pretty hard, right? But again, there is a lot more that YC offers than just particularly, the startup school, which is kind of how it's seen, like Ray mentioned, just a kind of, structured program for these, early kids straight out of college or even dropping out of college who don't really know how to run a business. It does a lot of that for sure, but probably the most valuable thing you get out of that is just the network, the connections. It kind of puts you on the map. And again, having that YC stamp gives your company just a little bit more credibility when you go talk to some of these bigger VCs. So when we get into, deeper fundraising, that kind of thing.
Right. Now, I think there is that stereotype that YC is definitely more for tech companies. I think for Vena Vitals, you guys are, more med tech, right? Wearable device, and Entelexo, you guys are definitely in a very life science space. How do you guys, view that? I think a lot of life science companies really have hesitations, right, in regards to, am I really going to get the same value? Can you share your thoughts about that? Let's start with Entelexo this time.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big part of it, right? You realize this kind of as soon as you get in, especially for us on the very life science side of that biotech spectrum, especially, there's not a whole lot of companies like us out of the maybe 300 or so odd that they take. We were one of about 15 kind of life sciencey companies. So you're in a smaller group, a lot of those talks that they have, a lot of these kind of structured things that they do set up are geared towards specifically kind of tech companies. So there is a little kind of massaging that you have to do to get out a lot of the value from some of these things. But again, it's a lot of the connections that you make. Maybe the biggest thing in that realm when you talk about kind of the fundraising side is a lot of the investors that they're going to introduce you to are not necessarily life science based investors. A lot of these guys come out of big tech. A lot of these guys aren't going to follow any jargon. You're going to have to spend a lot of time explaining science to them. One myth that we can kind of dispel here, especially for a bio company, is that, well, YC is going to introduce us to all the fundraising kind of partners that we'd ever need to know, right? So that's not really the case. But what they do a very, very good job of is kind of teaching you a lot of translatable skills on how to kind of prepare to go into these meetings, right? So you may not be using the exact same materials to go into a life science VC meeting that you're going to go into an angel investor VC meeting or tech VCs, whomever. A lot of those skills do translate, right? So understanding your audience, understanding what's going to hit home, understanding, how to pitch these kinds of things.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, I definitely agree with Cameron on those aspects. That was, again, one of our hesitations initially when we thought about it. But, when we talked to the former, or the companies who were alumni who came from life sciences background or they were doing med tech or med devices, it was a very resounding, like, you should definitely do YC. And we took that to heart. And after we went through the experiences, that's when we understood it much better, is that, I think, to Cameron's point earlier, your YC experience is more in your smaller cohort. So even though the program is huge, you've got a wide variety of different companies, but we got to know our cohort of, there are 6-7 companies that you're in a small group with, and every week you're with those same companies, and those are all similar space companies as you. And so we, just from that small group, that's where we leverage significantly each other for fundraising. We share investors with each other, and really, we go through a very similar journey and similar process together. So I think that helps a bit to bring it more down to scale. And for us also, YC was a supplement to other accelerators as well, because we also did MedTech Innovator, and we also did another accelerator, a clinical accelerator called Health Tech Arkansas. So you're not limited to just one accelerator, but at the same time, you don't want to do too many accelerators. We really try to be as strategic as we could in that YC, okay, we knew we would get more of the general startup guidance, and especially towards fundraising, bring a diversity of different investors into discussions with us, and that helped us significantly. Whereas with MedTech Innovator, we focus on, being able to build relationships with strategics and being able to look towards some of our future, and even also, on the regular, more MedTech specific, regulatory, reimbursement, all of these other topics, we were able to get a lot more guidance from MedTech Innovator. And then the clinical is for our actual clinical studies that we're running. So I think I wouldn't be worried too much if that YC is general. I think there's a lot of value that comes from the general side of things. That what YC does really well is they run this process, and I'm speaking more specifically to fundraising, is that they shorten that time frame to literally it's a demo day and then the follow-up week or two after, where there's a much higher number of investors than there are startups, and so they're competing with each other to be able to get a chance to invest in you. And so that really flips the table. It's a forcing function for you to be able to help raise your round. And that I haven't seen that type of a dynamic work as well as YC, anywhere else. I haven't heard of any other scenario where it's been as effective as what YC is able to do.
And something that I would just like to add, as far as like life science value, or biospace in general with YC, is like, while they're traditionally known for like software and tech development, every year they are expanding the value that they can bring back to the biotech space, because every year they're learning more, they're accumulating more and more experts in the field and advisors, and with every new biotech company that comes in there, they're adding more to that network, right? And so they actually put us in touch with a few like bio experts as advisors who their input has been invaluable, and we could not find that anywhere else.
Also, the questions and the type of the way non-technical people see your platform and your company is different from technical biotech focus. You still get a lot of value out of that, because the way they see the company overall strategy and everything is very different. So definitely there are some value in that.
Fantastic. Now, I know a lot of people have questions around like, okay, what is this whole process like? I know, Ray, you guys have been out for almost a year now, right? And then Entelexo team, you guys just graduated a couple of months ago, right? And just closed your round. So let's start with our newbies on the block this time. Can you just kind of generally, you guys, you're so fresh out. What is this process like, right? I know I witnessed your stress during that whole period of time.
So like I would say, so there's like, this is one of the like stigmas, I guess, that like YC has, is people like automatically assume it's just going to be a huge time commitment and like there's going to be a lot of things due. And like, yes, that's true, but it's also up to the founders, right? So you get to choose how much you put in. It's not like you're going to school and you're getting a pass-fail grade at the end of this kind of thing. So whatever you decide to put in, whatever your commitment is, like you're gonna get that response and feedback. And so we went ham basically. We showed up every day. We put in all the work. We basically took all of their advice to heart. And we grew a ton in that short amount of time. And like it was absolutely stressful some days and some entire weeks maybe. But I don't know about these two guys, but I don't regret at all like the effort that we put in.
Yeah, and another great thing about I know Vena Vitals was probably the first group to start this, but by the time we kind of got there and went through it, they're starting to run these things very smoothly in this environment, right? So the whole thing is via Zoom. We don't have to make the trip up to San Francisco. And like Ray mentioned, you get to know the small teams in your cohort extremely well. And for us, those guys are in Denmark. Those gals are in the UK. We've got buddies in Vienna now, so it's kind of really, really awesome experience kind of seeing what cool things everybody's doing from around the world. And, you kind of get to expand your network and just kind of your perspective well beyond just kind of, the San Francisco bubble that I think is, or at least things used to be a little more like.
So
Awesome.
talking
Now,
about
can you guys just clarify how many weeks was it?
3 months.
3 months, yeah.
12 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks, ballpark.
So basically the pressure comes when they are pushing you so hard on de-risking your platform and have this, minimum viable product, depending, how you call it. But they're pushing you to do a lot of experiments, a lot of data in the short amount of time, and you have to be cautious of the time and money. You don't want to spend a lot of money. At the same time, you have to be cautious of the time. So that's where the pressure comes from us, because We just want to make sure we can generate enough data for that D-Day, as they call it, demo day, to have enough data to show to the investors. That's the push. And you have, by that time, you have to have a almost perfect slides, pitch deck, everything else that come with that. So basically, you have to be super ready in case of in terms of your understanding of the market, your technology, how to pitch to investors, and there were a lot of trainings, on how to answer particular questions. That added a lot of value. If investors ask you this, you can answer this. There was a lot of training on that as well. That helps you to really have a good understanding how to handle those investor meetings.
Great.
Yeah, and again, it's you get in what you put out of it, right? So for us, the Entelexo team, we're all first-time founders. A lot of that stuff, we engaged really heavily with because we'd not seen it before. And maybe Ray, you can speak to this. Maybe you didn't engage too heavily on some of the things that you've seen before, and maybe more heavily on things that you had.
Well, I'll comment on just in terms of, because every company is at a different stage when you're in YC, and we saw it in our cohort too. So you can leverage a lot of experiences from each other. For us, the traditional YC mantra is, hey, you drive to find out as much customer discovery as possible. You get a product, get a prototype out there, and then go test it, and then be able to get feedback, try to sell it, and then those are your real customers giving you real feedback. It's a little bit harder for a biotech or a med device company to be able to do that. I mean, we were fortunate; we did get some early clinical data, but it's not the same as going out there and peddling your product and trying to get a lot of that customer input. But I would say the day-to-day, a lot of that is actually driven from your peers. It's not that YC or the YC partners are cracking a whip saying, hey, you got to do this, you got to do it. It's really as you see the other peers in your cohort, these other companies who are same position as you, sometimes way behind you when you started, and all of a sudden you see them gaining traction, whether it's getting LOIs or it's getting experiments or getting into IRBs, like all of that is a lot of intrinsic motivation for you to put the pressure on yourself. Say, hey, what could we do better? How are they doing it? And then be able to leverage that.
Yeah, there definitely was a lot of that for sure. You see a lot of these guys making a lot of progress, and you're like, oh, that could have been me. I could have done a little bit more. So the next week you're adding in a little bit more doing a little bit more work to get to that milestone. They always have, the partners, they always give you these 2-week goals or 1-week goals to make sure that you reach those. And then by that time you meet with them again, they will see, okay, did you meet those goals? What happened? What can you do to address that? And so they definitely help plan out your timeline to prepare you for that demo day. So there's a lot of accountability from the partners and from your peers as well. And so it's a very good environment, and it definitely lives up to the name of accelerating, because you have to accelerate. Otherwise you're slowing down and you're lagging behind all your peers. So you don't want to look like that person that's not doing anything. So you already have that minimum motivation there. You just need to add in a little bit more on top of that to succeed. So,
yeah. And one other thing to add to that, I recall, in our weekly meetings with our cohort, each team presents their progress and what their goals are for the next week. And so a team will present, hey, we want to get 20 new customers next week. The first response would be, well, why not 200? And so that's a very common theme. And it's really more of it's a mindset change, right? So I think we're used to thinking incrementally, and what they're, what the partners really try to push for and help facilitate through the process, through that journey, and along with all your other peers, is to really think exponentially.
Fantastic. We have a live question from Allie. Allie, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak. All you have to do is unmute your mic.
Hi there, congratulations to the Entelexo team. I just wanted to know if you guys can give us a little color on your fundraising progress, including the work you've done on the fundraising platform. I found your pitch there, and I wanted to see how that's going. Thank you.
Good. Hi, Ali. Nice to meet you. So we met Ali before. So we closed our Plan B for the exact number, I would be more than happy to direct message you, to give you, but definitely we close our seed round. But for the exact number, I'm gonna message you.
Sure. Thank you, Milad. Now, gentlemen, can you guys give us a little more color in regards to that demo day? What, what was the pitch structure like? Let's start with Vena Vitals.
I'll let Ray answer this one because he did the pitch, but there's a very story to the pitch too. So
Yeah, the pitch is really interesting because it was a 60-second demo day pitch, so it's really not a lot of time. And to prepare that 60-minute demo pitch, you're spending literally like weeks, if not a full month, just putting that story together, because that story has to be extremely sharp, clear, and succinct. But at the same time, you also so the process, basically you do the demo day, and that demo day the investors will basically have a like button, and if they hit that like button, you get an email that connects you. And then the next step is then to set up a meeting. So typically that's a half-hour meeting that you would have with the investor, basically to do your full pitch. And half hour is not very long. So compared to before YC, we were doing pitches that were multiple sessions long, like deep in the technology, and it definitely dragged on quite a lot. But what we really liked about this is, right after demo day, I think we had about 272 likes. Those were like investor requests for meetings. We were only able to respond to about 80 or so of those. So we had 80 meetings. I mean, that's a lot of meetings, right? Like 80 half-hour meetings in the span of like 2-3 weeks. We were doing like, 13, 14 meetings back to back a day. Very exhausting, grueling. That's probably the most exhausting period of the YCs were actually right after demo day. But what's great about it is that you're able to present everything, and there is already that inherent demand that most of the times our investors were able to make a decision after those 30 minutes. And then we were able to quickly close our round as a result. But Karen, back to your question in terms of preparing for that demo day, actually a lot of YC is really about how you tell your story to investors. And I think that what we got out of it was really around understanding the mix of investors that are out there. And YC investors are very different from, I would say, many other groups of investors, whether it's East Coast investors or Orange County investors or traditional medtech, biotech investors. So I think, for the Entelexo team alluded on this earlier too, in that you have to tailor your presentation, your pitch to be a lot more understandable for this group of investors. And once they understand it, then it's, they do have deep pockets and can write big checks. And so through YC, if you're able to navigate that well and present well to that group, then that's how you can be successful. But it emphasizes the need to know your audience and who you're actually pitching to, what aspects you should emphasize.
And to just kind of quickly add something to that. So obviously it is important to tell your story very succinctly and very clearly, because these investors are very general. But on top of that, because of the format of how demo day is structured, this whole demo day it goes throughout the entire day from from 8 a.m. to however long. And these investors are sitting through every single one, and each one is about 60 seconds. So you can imagine how many pitches they're listening to. So it's even more important for you to actually tell your story very succinctly and very clearly, but you also want to stand out against all these other 60-second pitches. So there's more urgency to, improve that pitch to that aspect. So, I mean, and it really only works in this YC environment because you have so many investors listening to you. Whereas if you're raising funds more traditionally, it's the other way around when you're reaching out to investors. So it really is a great environment, and I think it was very valuable for sure.
So talking about that 1 minute, I would like to add something. as Ray mentioned, you practice like months, basically, literally months for that 1 minute. It's a lot of pressure because you want to say the exact word, you have to convey the meaning, and there's a lot of like a stress when you have to wait in the line till your logo of the company comes in. You are in an environment that you feel a little bit of a stress, and it's easy to forget words. Even if you rehearse, it's very easy to forget even one word. Or if you change the word, you're gonna miss 60-second time. So they're very strict. So everything that you were rehearsing, it has to be exact, and it has to be basically perfect. So that put us under a lot of pressure, I'm sure everybody else, to make sure that you give a perfect pitch, you get those likes, so you can engage further with those potential investors.
Not to mention, you have to be wary of all those like technical glitches. Like, you're watching like hundreds of these presentations. There's definitely at least like 10 or 15 where they had technical glitches, or like they would get suddenly moved all the way to the end of the day because they had an error. And it's like, who knows like what kind of like opportunities you missed out on because of that. And with the Zoom, they did change a little bit of how that worked from our batch. So they did separate it out between like an investor wants to connect button to the likes and etc. So that did help a little bit, but there's definitely that post demo day madness where like, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 weeks where it was just not, our entire calendars for all day was just meeting. And
we were thinking, we're gonna be dead in this office after like certain meetings because it was like back to back meetings. It was so exhausting, but this is the way to do it.
Basically pitch in your sleep at one point.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously, yeah. I was dreaming about pitching that period, all the time, because you just pitch every day.
Cam, do you want to weigh in a bit?
Yeah, sure. And again, I think Ray kind of hit it on the head. You want to tell your story really, really succinctly, and I may even go so far as to say you don't even get to the point where you tell your story in that demo day pitch, right? Like it is simple. 3 words is basically what they kind of keep telling you. Again, the object of the demo day meeting is not to, tell them what you're doing even. For us, not possible in 60 seconds, right? So it's like, okay, you got to get out there and you've got to get the second meeting. That is the entire goal of demo day. Throw away what you're doing, throw away, all of these cool things that you want to tell them. You got animal data, that's so cool. Nobody cares in 60 seconds, right? So it's a kind of weird, you do all of this focus and then you got to back it all up and gloss it all over. It's kind of a surreal thing, and again, YC talk about them a lot. What you want to hit here, either vertebrae, or what you call it, kind of the main points, right? The things that you can't live without, the things that an investor is going to look at in 2 seconds and say, wow, like that's what you need to hit. You don't even, for us, we don't even get to our story. We're scientists, all 3 of us. We want to tell you how this works and how cool it is and, all of this kind of stuff. And even for us, like we kind of had to dial back even in those second meetings, you get like a 30-minute Zoom call with an investor and you know what? You still aren't really talking about the science. These guys are coming out of, Amazons and Microsofts. So you're going to need 2 hours to explain to these guys kind of what's really going on a basic level, if they even care. A lot of them really don't. So that was kind of a weird thing for us. We had all of our science and gears turning. We had to back it up and kind of simplify.
Gotcha. Now we have some questions coming in from Subarna asking you about investor term sheets. Like, did you have those ready or, what was that?
So YC is really nice in that, a lot of the investors in the YC system have gone through YC before. They know really, really well how it works. And YC kind of has their standardized, almost template version of a safe note. And they encourage all of their companies to raise on the same safe note. You just kind of, the cat may fluctuate a little bit here and there. And all of the investors are very much expecting to see these safe notes, which is really, really nice. When you get into the bigger VCs and you start asking for larger sums of money, this is absolutely not the case. These guys are telling you the terms. They're telling you the percentage they want. These are the term sheets, this kind of thing. Especially just around demo day, that's really not the case. Everybody's expecting these safe notes. These deals move very, very quickly. For some of the larger, $500,000, $1 million checks, you can expect, 3-4 meetings and a month or two of diligence. That's just kind of the way it is. But, we were having people saying, hey, what's your cap via email? And then, all right, I'm in Spain. I'm not even going to take your time. Here's a 25K check. We don't even want to meet you. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, we also had our fair share of that. But I would say, what the way that the fundraising is set, the structure of it is really tailored to that entire system of raising money quickly, right? Because when you try to go through a term sheet, it can drag on, going through line by line all the details. And so YC is set up so that you can raise on safes, or we did convertible notes in our case, which is essentially the same. But the whole idea is to be able to raise capital quickly. And our largest check was, I think, 800,000 on a convertible note. So it's not, they can go as high as you want. YC is set up, and these days, typically, whether it's seed or pre-seed, for us, it was a seed round. I would say most companies is a seed round. It doesn't have to be on a price round. And there's obviously advantages and disadvantages in going either way. But what we saw in our cohort, especially, was there were some of our peers, they really wanted to do a price round, and they were, pushing towards that. They didn't really benefit as much from YC because they couldn't take advantage of being able to have those quick decisions and start taking money in. Ultimately, they still were successful, and they got what they wanted, but it dragged on. I think they closed their round. So we finished, we had demo day in August, and then they didn't close on their round till maybe like March, like around, March or April timeframe. So it's quite a long time to be able to close their round, and a little bit extra stress during that time. That ultimately it worked out for them. But if you're able to take smaller checks and take them quickly, that's the strategy that works well in a YC construct.
Great. There's some questions flowing in about typical percentage discounts with investors.
In YC, typically there's no discounts, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's something that we learned, right? So prior to YC, we were raising on a pre-money safe note, and that's the one where you've got the discount and the valuation cap. And again, I got anywhere between 15 and 25% discounts are relatively standard for those. The YC deal is a post-money safe note, which is the version where you just have the valuation cap and don't really offer the discount. Nobody really expects it, just at least in the little YC bubble.
Great. Now, as you guys we're considering YC, I know, we're going to talk about some of your hesitations, like why didn't you want to do YC? Like what were your major hesitations? Well, besides the 7%, anything else that you were really kind of drew you back a little bit versus just being all in?
Well, yeah, may have touched on it a little bit previously, but again, that 7% was a thing. But kind of looking past that, again, it is very much a tech-based accelerator. We were looking at, their slogan is write code and talk to users. We do neither of those, right? So our biggest kind of question surrounding this was what kind of value are we going to get out of it? But like kind of Ray mentioned, as you start to talk to some of the folks who've gone through, Todd was lucky enough, he had a brother in the same batch as we were. And so he'd kind of gotten the introduction and the orientation already. And he's looking at us in the eyes like, guys, I cannot tell you enough how much you need to do this. So, and again, a lot of the testimonials, you only hear amazing things. And here we are telling you guys amazing things about this process. So the 7% is daunting at first, especially. And then, we had our issues about being the kind of big minority in terms of being a biotech there, but a lot of that is evened out very, very quickly. I mean, like we got 2 weeks in and I'm looking at my log like, thank you for making me do this.
Yeah, and like I'll add a little more credit to my brother, to be honest. So he had started a company, and his is software based. It's a SaaS company, and we got together actually for our Thanksgiving week. Even though it was during COVID, we went to like an Airbnb and had a little feast and everything. And he's like, "So are you gonna have you gotten into YC?" Because we were just about to have our interview. And I was like, we're kind of still thinking about that. 7% is really seeming like a lot right now. And he just looked at me and gave me that you're my best friend and you're being really stupid right now. And he's like, I can't tell you all the reasons why you need to do this, but even though you're a biotech company, let me tell you, you're making a big mistake by not accepting that offer. And he was right. You know, like looking back, I would have really, really like been upset at myself if I had like led us the other direction. You know.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we would do it again in a heartbeat. We would join YC and also the other accelerators too that we participate in. But to that 7%, I mean, the way that we looked at it, it was actually very straightforward when you think about, you know, do you want to keep, you know, a large portion of a $50 million company, or do you want to be $1 billion company? And I think that YC is really tailored to get you to be a $1 billion company, and the investors that YC brings, they're interested in seeing you become $1 billion company. And so that's, again, it comes back to some of that mindset change. I mean, when we started, I think our goals were definitely lower. Our targets were lower compared to after we started with YC and through YC. And you know, after talking with the investors and getting the investors on our cap table, our targets are definitely much higher now than they were when we started.
Awesome. Now I know, you know, when we did our little powwow and had our, you know, conversation, we were talking about the signaling effect, and Ray, can you speak a little bit about that, and you know, what you really saw as a benefit through YC in relation to that signaling effect?
Yeah, we were talking the other day about, you know, for your early round investors, if you get a brand name like Khosla or NEA, one of these, you know, bigger firms, there's a signaling effect in your next round. Let's say in your Series A, if they don't reinvest in you, that can be problematic. For us, it really came into play as we were finishing out our seed round. We could have waited for one of the bigger firms, Khosla. Actually, we were in some pretty deep discussions with them, but we felt like we didn't. You know, YC actually is one of the biggest VCs out there. They're one of them. They're probably the most well known even, and so just by having YC on our capital, we still can get intros to any other investor for our Series A. So it pays dividends beyond the current round that we were in, and so that allowed us to be a lot more flexible in terms of how we approach other investors. We were able to take other investors to be able to get the money in quicker and get back to building our company, rather than trying to be too strategic, especially in a seed round, about who we want on our cap table and who we want for the future. And YC, there isn't that expectation. You know, YC isn't in the role of reinvesting. I know in the old days it used to be. Nowadays they don't reinvest in actually mostly they don't reinvest in your future rounds. And so from that standpoint, there's no negative signaling impact, yet we get all the benefits of having a big brand name on our cap table.
Also on the Series A, now they are developing their Series A program. So after you are done with whatever you're doing, whenever you are ready for Series A, you basically, they recommend that you engage with them. Then they put you into another training sessions, office hours, and a lot of like training to help you, get most out of your Series A, fund. So they basically put you in touch with world-class, VCs. They train you how to pitch. They tell you about the legal part of it, what you need to show to the investors. So basically, they have the training session for that as well. So this is, I think, very recent that they.
Yeah, if the YC program is undergrad, they've got grad school when you're ready for it. Like they like lining it up that way. And yeah, like Ray mentioned again, like you've got all the positive effects of having that, like because the big thing for, I think, especially biotechs, when you raise a seed round, a lot of these investors are going to look at you and say, well, who's your big name? Like, where's the next round of money coming from? Because to make it through phase 3s and enter the market, you need a ton of money. But somebody sees YC there, it's just like, well, yeah, they're probably got it going on, so you get that big positive bump without any of even risk of not having follow-on money. And again, they've got lots of big firms are associated with YC. These guys who typically follow on the YC investment, even though YC doesn't really do it themselves, kind of as Ray mentioned.
Fantastic. Now, we talked a little bit yesterday about the pixie dust. Now, the YC pixie dust, and if we could, we'd bottle it. Now, Ray and Josh, I know you guys have been graduated out for a year. Is it a real thing?
Josh, maybe you can comment a bit on the recruiting side of things. I think that's
I think that's where it really comes out to, right? Like Y Combinator, having that logo for your company, it really does help increase the value, not just to investors, but also to people that you potentially will hire, right? Like you not having that YC logo, you're just another startup company, right? But then you have YC logos on your next to your logo. It just seems that much more valuable. So it makes recruiting a lot easier because now you have a company that seems like it can become that billion-dollar company. You have a great mission, vision, and so it attracts more talent. So you're more secure in hiring higher quality talent as before, not doing YC. So I think that's truly valuable. So that pixie dust definitely lasts. It's definitely gonna, stay there for as long as I think the existence of our company. And yeah, I think it's a real thing for sure.
Yeah, and that network is huge, right? So both on the recruiting side as well as for future investors, like that community of investors, like there are many investors, they really they look at the YC as a point of validation, so the diligence is much lighter that they have to do, because they see that, oh, okay, you have YC and you have through YC we also have a number of other investors on our cap table, so that gives an instant validation that you don't have to get through, and that it makes it very easy to get your foot in the door for the first discussion. I mean, you still have to sell your company, you still have to pitch appropriately, but you don't have as much of a hurdle getting your foot in the door for whether it's investors or strategics or recruiting. You name it. I think it does help quite a bit.
Yeah, I forgot to mention they do have a program, like a work at a startup program, where they basically you can have job postings, and then people who apply to work at a startup can then look at those job postings and see if they want to apply to them. So it's basically YC creates this like huge community, and it kind of like feeds on itself almost. Like a lot of the software companies, they're like a lot of their first customers are other companies within the batch. And then now all of a sudden, now you can also recruit from this huge pool that they have generated themselves. So you have a much higher reach to other talents that you never knew before, never could have gotten before. And so there's that aspect to it as well by joining YC.
Yeah, and to add kind of on what Josh said just there, they've expanded this and they kind of take a lot of pride. We haven't had a whole lot of direct experience yet, as we haven't really started hiring. We're still not quite there, but they take a lot of pride in the folks that they actually populate these, the potential candidates that they are giving to YC companies. They take a lot of pride in kind of screening these folks ahead of time. These are the folks with the entrepreneurial spirit, right? With the we like to joke the discipline of a Marine, but the mindset of a pirate, right? So these aren't the guys who pop out of college and want to go work for the big company and slave away at the same career for 30 jobs to get a pension and go home. These are the guys who are, excited to work in a dynamic environment. They really want to, shake things up. So again, finding those like-minded people is the big value there.
Great. I think you guys touched on my, started to going to my next question, outside of just having access, to VCs and funding, right? What are some of your unexpected takeaways from your experience, or, kind of the highlights of your experience?
So I would like to, start. They basically start the training with some of these invited speakers. They always start with the founders of Airbnb. So you see a lot of successful multi-billion-dollar companies where they started from scratch, zero. What are the pains? What are the ups and downs that they went through to have a successful company? So you first hear those stories. Also, you being part of a YC, you can contact them anytime, have a Zoom conversation. Like basically, they are in your access, in your contact. So if you have a question, if you need introduction, if you need help, they are be willing, to be part of a YC community to help you. So even if some of them are like now world class or celebrities in the tech and app world, but you still have access to them and they can help you anytime.
Even to this day, we're still, leveraging them, right? We still have office hours every now and then with some of the YC partners. We have some difficulty in like solving a problem. We reach out to them because they are a resource and they have answers. Even if they can't answer or solve your problem, it's very likely that they can refer you to somebody else that can. So it's a long-lasting network. It's going to be there for you to access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also
just-
maybe might, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just real quick to touch on what Milad said, I think is really important is, in a way, when you listen to the stories from the other founders and the journey that they went through, and especially the difficulties that they went through, because all of them who are very, very successful now, whether it's Airbnb, Brex, we talked to some really, really amazing companies out there, but they all were, this close to failing and this close to shutting down. And those types of stories and experience, it's almost like a therapy session for us as founders, because the journey as a startup founder is difficult. It's a roller coaster, right? And I think some of it is just how do you get through, both the highs as well as especially the lows, and hearing the stories told directly from those successful founders provides a lot of encouragement and inspiration and motivation that helps you get through some of those lows, because everybody goes through them.
Yeah. And again, they kind of pitch themselves almost as, well, we're not going to tell you how to succeed, but we're going to tell you a billion ways not to fail, right? So if you learn anything, you're going to learn how everybody else went down in a ball of flames, and just try not to do that, right? I will say the one thing that really kind of smacked me in the face that I was not expecting to get out of YC is the very, very close bond that you make with some of these companies that are, in our case, like halfway around the world, and then also not, right? So there was a company in our small group that was based out of UCLA, and turns out, the professor who was a founder at this company was really, really interested in the work we were doing, and they wanted to maybe try a collaboration. So they came down, sent a few grad students down. We gave them a few cells to see if they could play around with them and get these kind of cool readouts. And we're happy to do it. These connections, you kind of like to think of them on a big scale, but even on a very, very kind of grounded level, it's like, I'm really interested in that. Like, cool, man. Let's have an offline chat about it. That's going to be really fun.
Awesome. Now, when you went through the process, the 12 weeks, did you guys change your business strategy? I mean, what were some of your biggest pivots? Like, did you change your story? What,
Significantly.
I don't think that anything stayed the same as it was going into YC, to be honest. Like, I don't think a single aspect stayed the same.
Maybe the formatting, that was like of the executive summary and slide deck.
Our names we even changed our logos during YC. Literally, the name is the only that stayed.
The only thing we didn't change our official name and last name. And technology, of course.
Wow,
Yeah, so to kind of elaborate on that, right? So you've got you've got a rudimentary understanding of kind of how you're pitching when you go into these things. And one of the cool things that they do at YC, they give you a lot of kind of baseline information a lot very, very quickly, but then they encourage you to do what they call office hours with the big guys, right? So like the president of YC is willing to meet with us for 30 minutes. And he's like, guys, that's really cool how you're working on all the kind of day-to-day stuff, but let's think big picture. Let's take a step back. What do you guys think?
Our experience was different. We ultimately didn't change much in terms of our strategy, our plan. But what we got out of it was really like, we were able to validate it better, but the validation wasn't that the partners were telling us we were doing it right. They were shooting holes at it left and right. Like, I swear, every single meeting that we went to, we got yelled at like for a half hour. They just like straight on, like no holes barred, just like, yeah, we felt like really stupid after each meeting. But then that forced us to go and really recheck our assumptions and go way, way deeper than the level that we were going. And that then helped us to be able to reinforce we could come back and defend it much stronger. And we were then able to still, hold course, but we even ourselves had a much stronger conviction of the course that we were taking. And we did, that's not to say that we didn't try, like we tried a few deviations. I mean, for us, you know, our market, when we started, we were going after the operating room market in the hospitals as a regulatory path. And for all these reasons, you know, we kind of expected YC to try to steer us toward the consumer. And that did happen. So the partners challenged us quite a lot to say, hey, why don't you just go try it? Go, you know, you have a prototype, just go slap it on as many people as you can and collect data and then grow your company that way. And we did through various like experiments and also further customer discovery that we had. And ultimately we felt like the strategy we had was still the right approach. We just needed to have a better story around why this was. And ultimately it did work out for us because, you know, even though we're going after a highly regulated market, a traditional med device path, we didn't have any problem getting investors on board. So I think that was still super valuable for us in going through the process.
Now, were there any advantages of not being a tech company?
Yeah, you know, we didn't, when we went through the experience, we honestly didn't experience much of tech versus non-tech. It was more, you know, even though some of the broader talks where it's like the entire cohort was involved, that there's lessons that we can apply, like regardless. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Those are, you know, the types of lessons that are just like transformative across the board. But in our day-to-day, it was very much all the other companies were going through also regulatory process. They were also, you know, going through IRB to be able to get clinical trials going. And so actually we were able to leverage each other significantly. So I didn't feel like there was any, I don't know whether it was an advantage or just, I didn't really get the sense that there was anything tech or non-tech as a differentiation.
I'll definitely agree with Ware on that point. You know, I did mention out of the 300 or so companies, we're like one of 15 that's biotech, but that's pretty much who you see on the day-to-day basis. You don't really kind of get that minority complex until like the big kind of talks. You know, obviously these guys are talking about, you know, write code and talk to users, right? I would say the kind of biggest advantage, the kind of is the exact flip side of that, you know, where we are sitting here trying to tailor our pitches to some of these more bio-savvy folks, YC really does kind of bring you back down. And I feel like we can now target those more tech-savvy or just non-scientific audiences way better than we ever would have, you know, done otherwise, you know. And we also have a lot of exposure to a lot of these folks who we probably wouldn't otherwise. You know, we're still going to, you know, get after all of these life science specific people, all of this kind of stuff didn't really change for us. We just had this big dump of, you know, tech savvy people and non-scientific people who were very interested in us all of a sudden, right? So the kind of, and they like those kind of token biotech companies in there, right? You've got these folks in the YC database who are like, I'm so excited about all the biotech this year. You know, there's not a lot of them, so it's easier to stand out in that respect.
I can also think of like two other slight advantages to being a biotech company in a YC batch. And one of those is, you know, because there's so few companies that are in that space of the YC batch, getting access to the YC specific advisors is a lot easier than it probably is for the tech companies. And you can actually, like, there's a lot of meetings that we had one-on-one even that went overtime. Like it exceeded the 30-minute thing, and they would go on sometimes for another 30 minutes. And I mean, you know, from my brother's end, who was on the tech side, that did not happen for them. Like, it was really hard sometimes for them to even get meetings. Whereas for us, like, I would say we never struggled to get a meeting with someone. Never, yeah. And, you know, they even have like a YC specific like chat group, and you can put any kind of question in there related to bio, and you'll get an answer within minutes. And that just doesn't exist really to the same degree for the tech guys. The other big advantage I could think of is, you know, YC has like associated deals, like they can give you discounts on things like services or products with other companies. And they definitely have like bio-specific ones, and we definitely have taken advantage of those.
Fantastic. So now all culminates down to this 7%, $125,000. Sounds like you guys would definitely do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's 100%.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, is there anything you guys wanted to add, gentlemen, for our startups and the audience today? I think we're wrapping up to the end of the session here. Any last thoughts as you're thinking about, your experiences? I think especially with Vena Vitals, you guys have been through several accelerators, right? Like, how do you choose? I mean, you don't want to do too many, right? You don't want to not do them at all. So how did you guys go through and choose which ones to participate in and which ones not to?
Just apply to all of them and just do all of them.
That will take up a lot of you won't be able to get any work done. So yeah, when we were starting out applying to accelerators, this was about a year and a half ago. I mean, our big target was to go after MedTech Innovator. That's a premier one for the med device space. So we spent so much more effort preparing for that than we did on YC. So I think it really just depends on your company and what you're looking for, what you need. I would just start by categorizing the different accelerators out there. Like YC is a general one. So whether you do YC or there are a couple other ones like Techstars and sorry,
StartX, I think was one.
StartX, yeah, is another one. Yeah, those fall into similar categories, but I would say that YC is the best. I can't really comment on the other ones, but I've heard other companies have had success and benefited from those other ones as well. So I would say YC I would categorize as a general and for fundraising one of I would consider it the best for fundraising and as a general accelerator. Then the rest just comes down to what else you want to be able to fill out your acceleration path. And I'll comment really quickly on MedTech Innovator. I think MedTech Innovator is really helpful for a little bit later stage. Like we were probably one of the earliest stage companies in MedTech Innovator. So if I did it over again, I might delay another year, because if we were delayed another year, then we would have more probably deeper discussions with the strategics that we met through MedTech Innovators. We got lots of access to these strategics, and we were able to, ask them a bunch of questions. We were trying to set up collaborations, but I think to get like really into some, real tangible benefits of strategic relations, I think we were still a little bit too early for MedTech Innovator. And then on the clinical accelerator, we did apply to a couple. We didn't get into the one in LA. I'm blanking on the name of it. Cedars-Sinai, yeah. We applied to Cedars-Sinai. We didn't get into that. We did Health Tech Arkansas. We got into that. And the clinical accelerator and Health Tech Arkansas has been awesome, because they gave us 3 sites that are basically running our clinical trials for free. That's a huge cost for a lot of companies. And so that is, as a healthcare company, if you have to do clinical studies, clinical collaboration, trying to work with one of the providers who also have an accelerator, that's definitely paid huge dividends for us already, because we're now active. We have IRB approval for all 3 of those sites, and we're getting ready to run those clinical studies.
Any thoughts, Entelexo, on you guys just recently graduated out, so the application process is pretty fresh in your mind. I think Milad said that he got accepted and needed to find some extra founders, co-founders. Any recommendations or advice for those that are thinking about applying to YC?
I will say this about the YC application. That was the most fun I think I've ever had on an application. So it's a lot less about kind of what you've done so far and a little bit more about how you think, right? So my favorite question on there was, it's like this whole big thing about, talk about a system that you've hacked that wasn't a computer system, right? And I talked about how I sent a bunch of pledges into college to track the meter maids around campus. So I had a schedule of where the parking meters were, and then, everybody parked for free for the year. And like that's the kind of thing that, they're looking for. They're looking for these kind of weird out of the box thinkers. And I had a lot of fun doing the application. So I would recommend, if you're sitting there and you're about to do it and you're thinking, okay, well, what's really, really impressive? It's like, think less impressive and think more kind of sideways as opposed to forward thinking.
One more thing that I would add, if you're applying to YC, keep the application simple. If you're coming from a biology background, you cannot say, oh, you're targeting ZAP2 transcription factor, blah, blah. You have to keep it simple, because very likely it's gonna get passed potentially to a non-technical, guy. So, but the point is that you have to keep it simple. That's gonna help to have a successful application. If you put a lot of buzzword, it's not gonna go that far.
Yeah, being flashy won't take you super far with
Exactly,
YC.
yeah.
They won't be impressed by that. In fact, you may upset them. They really do not like buzzwords, and it's understandable why.
They told us if we read the application quickly, like few seconds, like 10 seconds, if you understand it, it's in. If not, yeah, even if it's impressive, we don't understand it, understand it is out. So basically you have basically seconds to impress them by your application, and it has to be simple. If it's not, you are out, basically.
And speaking on like how I know that 7% is like a big scary number for a lot of potentials. Something that you hear a lot in YC is like, would you rather have 0%, of that company, or have 10% of like $1 billion company that you had help to get there, right? And so that's really something you should think about.
Yeah, I'll also throw in when you're doing that application, now is not the time to be modest, right? Their first criteria is, do we think this company can hit $1 billion? So hype yourself up, right? Like, not the time to be coy or like, oh, we think we could do this. It's like, no, we're doing this. They love the confidence, they love the simplicity. That'll get you a foot in the door.
Right, Josh, any final thoughts for folks thinking about applying?
Not really. I mean, I think Cameron, you hit it on the nail with the hacks, right? Like they really invest into people. I mean, the companies are important, but they look at people very, very deeply. I mean, I think, listening to the Airbnb talk, I forgot who was talking, but Paul Graham was basically interviewing these Airbnb guys, and he passed on them, but then I forgot who the founder was. He brought in a bag of or a box of cereals, right?
The Obamas.
The King Crunch or whatever, right? And they were saying, we are funding our Airbnb company with these cereals. And Paul Graham, he looked at that and was like all over it. It's like, you are doing that with your company. You're funding your company with these cereals. And he really liked it. He thought Airbnb was a joke. He thought the whole concept was ridiculous and he never would have funded it. But the fact that they hustled selling cereal to fund Airbnb, he loved that. And then that was kind of the basis for accepting Airbnb into Y-Combinator. So with that in mind, it's really the people. They look at people really seriously, and that's one of the biggest criteria for accepting people into companies into YC.
And just to quickly add on to that point as well, they see like 16,000, 17,000 applications every round. And all of these guys, come on, they're all the 4.0s, the wonderful awards and all the accolades. They're not impressed by any of that. That's your entry ticket. Then they want to see kind of what you're up to, who you are.